Environmental zone restriction ahead. Make sure you have the required permit to proceed.
What?
Environmental zone restriction ahead. Make sure you have the required permit to proceed.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Danny.
And this is Petrol Revolt.
Danny, talk us through that awesome legendary lap with the TT.
To be honest, the big bikes at the TT, they're a handful. But riding the RG around there was just an absolute pleasure. You know, the speed of it, it was fast enough. It handled like a dream. We actually didn't touch the suspension the whole way through. It was more just trying to get the correct engine setting for it, because you know what these bikes are like with jetting and stuff like that, and the TT with the different altitudes and stuff like that. So yeah, that was the hardest bit to kind of figure out. I had good people around me, you know, the laps we done, and again, we didn't have the weather on our side the first year, because obviously when it's raining, we don't run. So yeah, we was trying to figure the jetting out. The lap we done the onboard on was a good lap. I think it was 115 mile an hour from a standing start, and we still had a lot more in the tank. And you know, unfortunately, in the race, it didn't go our way. But again, you know, the way we worked together, the people I had around me was awesome.
Obviously, circuit racing and road racing, bikes are set up differently. Was there anything different on the RG for the road race to what it would have been on a circuit?
Not necessarily. We had a bigger tank. We had to have a bigger tank on it. You're obviously on it for a longer period of time, so I had to get more comfortable. We put more seat foam on, so I had more leg room in between the footrest and the seat. But apart from that, that was about it. Again, you have to run it a little bit on the safe side, but then, you know, when you start going up the mountain, you've got to use a bit of choke and stuff like that. So I have to do that manually, because obviously on these bikes, you know, you don't have a system what can do that. So you have to do it yourself, which was awesome. And I just went off the feeling, you know, the feeling of what the engine was giving me, and then I put a bit of choke on and go across the mountain. You know, that my two-stroke background really helped me with that, and I had to learn. I did have to learn a lot, but I didn't, because of my two-stroke background. I kind of got to grips with it quite quickly. There was a couple of corners I went through in a gear too low or a gear too high, and that's why, I mean, if you watch the lap, you'll be able to see them places, but there wasn't many places we did do that. That was just me being a self-critic and wanting to nail it. So, like I said, we probably had 3 or 4 laps in practice, and that was it. So we were still just fine-tuning the bike. I was still getting used to riding a two-stroke round there, and we was making big step forwards each time we went out.
So, Danny, was the reliability of two strokes a concern? Was the formidable TT circuit and the fragility of two strokes daunting? Didn't that make you think twice?
So when I first agreed to it, no, because, you know, all my thought was I'm riding a bike like Barry Sheen used to race, you know, and that's all I thought about. It wasn't until I got to the Classic, and a lot of riders were saying, bloody hell, you've got a big pair of knackers to be riding that round there. Didn't think about it, and then it wasn't until I got up on the grid for the first practice, it dawned on me a little bit, and I turned around to Mick Grant and said, look, what will happen if this will seize on me? And he said, you will, because I've rode two strokes before, he said, it won't be like a 125, it won't all of a sudden go. He said, you will feel it to begin with. He said, you'll just feel it. And he said, I can't explain it, but because you've rode two strokes before, you will know. We didn't have any of them problems. So yeah, we ran 17-inch wheels on it, which was different. We ran a better, a modern day front brake on it, just to make it a bit safer, a bit more of a modern shock, original forks, about 125 horsepower. The engine was an original engine, original crankcases and everything. So To run an 86 engine round the TT now, it was something special, and we didn't have a lot of problems with it. Again, it was mainly just jetting, no computers, nothing like that. We went off what the pistons were looking like, of what the end of the exhaust pipes, you know, the smoke on the end of the exhaust pipes were. And that's how we was going about things. And for me, I loved it, because that was like, it was taking me back, almost like I was racing in that era. So that was real cool. But unfortunately, the first year we ran it, we put a new rad on, and the rad, there was a problem with when they made it, which we didn't realise. There was a bit of a kink in it, so it wasn't letting the water flow through. So unfortunately, it just overheated. It didn't really overheat, but we had water coming out. So we had to pull it over. And at the time, we didn't know what the problem was. We didn't know if it was a cracked cylinder or something like that. But in the end, we found out that that was the problem. The year after, we tried some different things with some different exhaust pipes. Again, like we were saying, on the dyno, it was running good, but on the track, it just didn't seem quite right. We had a couple of problems with some oil leaks and stuff like that. Not major oil leaks, but, you know, enough to pull it over and just go, I'll sit here, I'll pull up at a nice pub and have a nice cold pint, instead of risking it, because you just don't know. You know, I could have gone another mile down the road and I could have had a load of oil on my back tyre, and the TT's not the place to be risking that sort of stuff. But it was a shame we never got to break the lap record, but it goes to show that, you know, what Rob Mack done back in the day on them, with the tyres they was on, with the technology they had, the track probably wasn't as good back then. It was incredible.
So what are the biggest differences between the 2-stroke and the 4-stroke around the TT?
It was nice just to get back on a 2-stroke, because that's what I've grown up on. So it was like just going home again. So there wasn't too much to take in. Whereas I think if someone who's always rode 4-strokes had never ridden a 2-stroke, it would have been a big shock. But, you know, some corners I was going through saying 4th and I should have been in 3rd. I only done that a couple of times, and the minimal amount of laps we got on it, I was starting to iron them out, you know. Obviously the TT's a massive lap, so it's not like you can go out in a 20-minute session and do 7-8 laps and iron all them problems out. You know, we had to do it in the matter of 4 or 5 laps sort of thing. And we was getting there, but yeah, for me it wasn't a huge problem. It was just about, okay, right, next time I'll go through there, I'll just knock it back another gear, you know. Whereas on a 4-stroke, you can get away with it. You've got more of a power band. The bike pulls through, especially on the big bikes now. It pulls through and you can just go through in 4th, and, you know, it'll pull through and you won't lose much time. But on a 2-stroke, if you go through in 4th and the RPM's not there, you'll lose a matter of seconds and not tenths.
What change of riding style does the 2-strokes hardly any engine braking cause? What do you need to do to set the bike up differently to enter corners?
Yeah, I mean, of course, modern day bikes now, you can do sort of anything with the engine braking. You know, you can have it as free as you want and then have it cut in as you go into the corner, so you get that bit of engine brake to hold you back. You can or you can have a lot of engine brake to begin with. You can do whatever you want now with the modern technology. But again, around the TT, it's very hard to set that up for each corner, because there's so many corners. So always on a 4-stroke, you're always going to have that bit of engine brake around the TT, whereas on a 2-stroke, you don't have any engine brake. And again, for me, it was a sort of a natural thing to go back to, you know, using the brakes instead of using the engine brake as much. You know, you just get hard on the brakes. As soon as you touch the brakes, that's got to be your hardest braking point. Get your speed scrubbed off, get into the corner and get back on the gas straight away. You know, just trying to minimalise that time, the neutral phase from the brake to the throttle, because the more time you have off the brake and off the throttle is the most dangerous time, because there's no force going through the bike. And that's sort of with any racing, not just the TT, but with the 2-stroke, that's even more important, because the longer you leave it to get on the gas, the longer the RPM is going to be going down. You always need something going through the bike. And like you see with Ramsey hairpin and stuff like that, it doesn't go off the bottom. You've got to come out Ramsey hairpin. It's always a bit dodgy because there's always some damp patches. You've got to get it on the big part of the tyre, give it a little slip of the clutch, get the RPM up there, and then the bike gets going.
Your career so far has been pretty phenomenal. The classes you've competed in, well, it's lots. Is there anything you haven't done? Is the TT the pinnacle, or was there something else more memorable? A bigger career highlight, if that's possible, than the TT?
Riding around the Isle of Man on the RG was a massive thing for me. It was a massive thing in my career, and it was a massive box ticked. But I've got so many, riding Kenny Roberts' RGV round Spa was another memorable moment. It wasn't a race, but it was an incredible moment and incredible experience. Being the last ever two-stroke pole position setter, in the World Championship again, is no one can take that away from me. It's in the history books, and that was amazing. It was an amazing day. Mahindra's first pole position as well, two-stroke, which was really special. So between them, a lot of my two-stroke days are my career highlights.
Okay, so riding Kenny Roberts' RGV 500 at Spa,
Yeah.
and your RG500 at the TT, what's the differences?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I actually rode the RG and the RGV at Spa the same weekend.
Good comparison.
So, it was an awesome comparison. Of course, the power was a lot different. The RGV was undergeared. I mean, even now I'm speechless. Like, how I can't explain it. I honestly cannot explain what it felt like. I first rode Kenny's bike at Cadwell Park at the classic Suzuki track day, come out of Mansfield, and it lit up a bit, and I had a bit of a moment. I thought, Steve won't be happy with me if I take this back in the back of a van. So then when I rode it at Spa, obviously Spa's a much more of a bigger track, blew me away. It blew my mind. Just coming out the corners and the thing just wanted to wheelie, the way it handled, the power delivery, the amount of power it had. At this point, I'd rode BMW, 1000cc superbikes and all that sort of stuff, and the RGV just blew all them away. Just the whole sensation with everything.
So some of the shots of Schwantz on his RGV 500 in some really weird positions and bike angles, you can understand why.
I don't understand why. I don't understand how they could ride them like that. The blue smoke pouring off them. And until you've actually rode one, you underestimate the skills them boys had, because how they rode them like that and how they rode them in the wet, I don't have a clue. It doesn't compute. When I rode it, it was meant to be at a parade, but I was having a bit of a go. I wasn't hanging about, and I was pushing it a little bit but to ride it to their standard, mind blowing.
That's why they were the unridables.
Yeah, and the amount of crashes they used to have, I can completely understand. Then they started to have computers and data logging and stuff like that, but as far as traction control,
No.
none of it. It was all with that, and that was the beauty of it, and that was the beauty of, I suppose, the next generation of two-strokes being able to know what to put in it, what jettings to put in it and stuff like that by having the computer. That's, I suppose, what then pushed on the way of the two-stroke.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Motorcycle racing nowadays compared to what it was in the 70s and 80s, it's totally different. When you take people like Barry, they used to work on their bikes, they used to know their bikes inside out, where nowadays the rider is basically just the rider, and the bikes are prepared and set up by mechanics and a massive entourage behind them, with just some feedback from the rider saying it's doing this, and then they adjust it to suit. It seems that, has some of the input from the riders been lost now?
Definitely. I think riders aren't lazy. They're not lazy now, but they can rely on the data more, so the engineers and that don't have to rely so much on rider feedback. Back then when Barry was racing, it was all about rider feedback, and the riders knew that. They knew if they didn't give the correct feedback, then they wouldn't get the maximum performance out of the bike.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when something went wrong, or like the story with Degner, there was nothing they could prove what went wrong with that bike. They don't know if he held it in a certain gear to seize it up or whatever he done. They couldn't tell that. But, the rider could come up with a little bit of a porcupine now and again, but 9 times out of 10 it was in their best benefit to speak the truth about the bike and what was going on with the bike to get the best performance out of it.
We've touched on the unridables, that sub 200 bhp 500cc two-stroke era, and that some riders managed absolutely unreal things on those bikes. The most iconic has to be Schwantz's Undertaker Rainy at Hockenheim.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just the way he got on the brakes, and I mean, The Suzuki always seemed to be good on the brakes, didn't it? It always seemed to be good on the brakes with Schwantz on it, but I mean, that race at Hockenheim was, yeah, it was incredible, wasn't it?
So you have mastered the unrideable RG500 around the TT circuit, pulling off a 115 mile per hour lap from a standing start. Could modern day riders replicate what those legends of the golden 500 era did on those machines?
I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, when you spend a lot of time on a motorbike and you know its characteristics and what it's going to do, and as a rider you always gel with the bike and you know where you can push it and where you can't push it. I think I would be able to get to a certain level, but not to their level. You know, what they done on them motorcycles was incredible. Schwantz, Rainey, Doohan, all them guys, they just rode them bikes unbelievably. And, you know, that's why they was at the top of their game. And a lot of people struggled to... They was sort of the aliens of the sport, wasn't they? Because they understood their motorcycles so well. And when you do spend a lot of time on a motorcycle, you do understand where you can take liberties with it and where you can't. To be honest, I think I'd have had a lot more crashes on it than what they did.
So, what's your best and worst corners at any circuit?
I mean, you can't beat bottom of Braille at the TT. But I would say best corner on a racetrack is the last two right-handers at a ref. Awesome section of circuit. Worst corner by far was the old Foggy S's at Donington. I got taken out there in 08 and 09. First lap of the Grand Prix, both Grand Prix I could have had a very good result at, obviously being the home Grand Prix as well. Yeah, taken out 08, 09, first lap, both times snap collarbone. So yeah, I would say the old Foggy S's at Donington is my nemesis.
What about your favourite circuit?
Favourite circuit, again, riding around the TTs, amazing, but Jerez is an amazing circuit. I love Jerez. I always loved Malaysia as well. Always loved the circuit in Kuala Lumpur. The Sepang circuit was an amazing circuit.
Road circuit or a race circuit?
The pure adrenaline, you can't beat a road circuit. You know, the pure adrenaline is incredible, but a race circuit, again, you can push the boundaries a little bit more on a race circuit.
You can afford to run off.
You can afford to make a few mistakes, and the way they are now, you can afford to make a few more mistakes than what you was able to.
2-stroke or 4-stroke?
2-stroke. Without a doubt, 2-stroke. There's no question about that. Don't get me wrong, the bikes now are incredible with what you can do with them and on them, but you can't beat a 2-stroke.
No.
The sound, the smell, everything.
RG or RGV?
Oh, I'm going to have to say RG because Sheeny, you know, he's my idol, so I'm gonna have to say RG.
Good answer.
Who are the riders you hold in the highest regard, not just current but across time?
Barry is always going to be an icon, legend, cool dude. I've always had a bit of a connection with Suzuki, Kevin Schwantz, Kenny Jr., and of course Valentino Rossi. There are a few, there's so many, you know. A memorable part of my career was I was in one of the first races I raced against Marc Marquez, and little did I know it was Marc Marquez at the time, and I was battling with him, and I thought he was just a little pain in the arse, if I'm honest, and he kept trying to knock me onto the grass down the start and finish straight at Barcelona, but little did I know then he was going to be as successful as he was, but you kind of knew just by his attitude. So there's so many.
Throughout your career, the teams you've ridden for and the bikes you've ridden on, if you could today own one of those bikes and have it pride a place in the living room, which bike would it be?
Can I say 3 bikes? There's too many. The RG500 I rode at the Classic, the De Graaf 08 Aprilia I rode for the Molinar team, and the Mahindra I got the last ever 2-stroke pole on.
Your 2-stroke pole position is a piece of history. Talk us through the events leading up to you winning pole.
You know, it was a miserable day. It was drizzling. Everyone was out on wets, and I just couldn't get the feeling. I think we were down in 25th, 26th place. Nothing was coming to me. So I come in the pits with 10 minutes to go. I said to the team, put some slicks in. They was like, no, we'll put a new set of wets in. And I said, no, put a new set of slicks in. We'll be all right, don't worry. I knew it was a bit of a risk at the time. And I think there was 2 others what actually made the decision as well to go on slicks. I went out, I put my foot down. I thought, there's quite a bit of grip there. First out lap, little bit of grip. Second lap, pushed it a little bit. I thought, okay, next lap went faster again, and then the last lap again went faster. Didn't realise I got pole until I come back into pit lane. It was incredible. I had the whole of the Ducati team clapping me and cheering me. And yeah, you know, coming to the pits, it was the first Grand Prix Mr. Mahindra had been to. You know, he's obviously funding the team. I didn't realise how big he was in India as well. He's an Indian icon. Yeah, so to get Mahindra's first ever pole and yeah, to get the last ever two-stroke pole was an incredible feeling.
This season, you're continuing with your endurance racing, but what else is keeping you busy?
Yeah, so we got the World Endurance Championship. I've had a good pass there. I've had 3 24-hour podiums, which is, you know, again, a good achievement. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to challenging for the title. I've set up my own Danny Webb's GP camp, so to try and teach the younger generation of riders the correct way to go about racing motorcycles professionally. At the moment, we've got an indoor flat track place where we hold them, so we do a bit of a fitness session. We do some flat track riding, which a lot of the Grand Prix riders do now in the winter time, and we do like classroom sessions, so we do media training, nutrition training and stuff like that, just to try and teach all the fundamentals, because you know, all the young riders want to be professional motorcycle racers. So from the mistakes I've made in my career and, you know, the good choices and the good decisions I've made, I want to bring that to the GP camp. So I'm busy with that and looking to do some stuff on kart circuits as well throughout the summer. And of course this petrol revolt, you know, bringing petrol engines to the community and people who still want to keep the petrol engines alive. But it's getting a bit boring with the electric stuff at the minute, but you know, we want to keep the petrol engines alive and just showing everyone these, you know, fantastic bikes and cars, and there's people still out there still having fun with petrol vehicles.
Right, it's 2022. What's your 3 tips for the top for BSB, MotoGP and a TT?
BSB, I'm going to say Haslam. I think Haslam's going to be strong. TT, you can't really look past Hickey. On top form, he's riding good in the BSB, and he can translate that to the roads, which is a good skill to have.
And he's got a big team behind him this year.
Yep, he's well funded. Yeah, Hickey for the TT. I would like to see Dunlop there as well, though. GP, again, the Ducatis are going to be strong, aren't they? They've kind of upped the level of their bike, you know, with the technical side of things and the electronic side of things. So Bagnaia and Jack are going to be strong, but I'm going to say Marquez, because it would be nice to see him come back from what he's been through. And Honda are putting a lot of work into their new bike. So, yeah, it would be nice to see Mark win a World Championship.
Good, it is.
To find out more about Petrol Revolt, then please head across to our website, petrolrevolt.com.